The cabin always smelled like cedar and lake water, the kind of scent Jack Rayner could almost drown in after months of concrete and sirens. He parked the truck just past the gravel bend, killed the engine and sat there for a moment. His shoulders loosened as the quiet wrapped around him. No radios buzzing, no adrenaline pounding in his ears, just wind and the distant slap of water against the dock. Ellie leaned forward in the passenger seat, her auburn hair pulled back in a loose bun. "It hasn't changed a bit," she murmured, gazing at the porch swing still creaking gently in the mountain breeze. Walter, her father, stirred awake in the back seat. At 74, the man snored through road trips, but always woke sharp as a knife when they arrived. "God almighty," Walter said, pushing his glasses up the bridge of his nose. "Thought I'd never see this place again." Jack smiled faintly. "Well, we're here, and we're not rushing back." They unloaded the truck, Ellie carrying groceries, Walter hauling his fishing rod like a soldier with his rifle, and Jack hefting a cooler of ice. The cabin itself was modest, pine walls, a stone chimney, and a porch overlooking the mirror-like water of Clearwater Lake. To outsiders, it was just another tucked-away retreat. To Jack, it was a perimeter, one he silently mapped as they settled in. Every door, every angle of the yard, every shadow line in the tree line. Old habits didn't die, not even when you tried to bury them under civilian life. By sunset, Ellie was cooking on the grill. Walter had already set his line in the water, and Jack allowed himself a beer. For the first time in months, laughter carried from the deck instead of dispatched chatter. "Feels good to breathe again," Ellie said, pressing against his shoulder. Jack kissed the top of her head. "That's the point. No interruptions, no work, no chaos. Just us. But peace has a way of shattering when you least expect it." The knock came on their second morning, sharp, impatient raps that rattled the porch door. Jack, already awake, set down his coffee and motioned Ellie to stay put. Walter, still half asleep, muttered something about damn woodpeckers. When Jack opened the door, she was there. Karen Malley. She stood on the porch like she owned it, clipboard in one hand, lips pressed so tightly her face looked carved from stone. Her short blonde hair was tucked under a visor that read Clearwater Lake HOA. "You must be the Rayners," she said without a greeting. "I'm Karen, president of the Homeowners Association. We need to have a chat." Jack kept his expression neutral. "Morning. Something I can help you with?" Her eyes darted past him into the cabin, as if she were cataloguing the contents of his life. "This property," she said, tapping her clipboard, "is not authorized for current occupancy. It was vacant last quarter. According to Bylaw 14B, you're required to submit notice of return." Jack leaned on the frame. "It's my wife's family cabin. We don't need permission to stay here." Karen's smile was thin. "Rules are rules. I'm only here to enforce them. Unauthorized stays lead to fines, and worse." Before Jack could respond, Walter shuffled up behind him. "You've got to be kidding me. This cabin's been in my family for 40 years. Nobody tells me when I can or can't fish off my own damn dock." Karen's gaze sharpened. "The lake is communal property. Outsiders abuse it." "Outsiders," Walter barked. "Lady, I've been paying taxes on this place since before you learned to drive." Jack raised a hand, cutting the argument short. "We'll take a look at the bylaws. Appreciate you coming by." His voice was calm, measured, the same tone he used in hostage negotiations. Karen narrowed her eyes. "See that you do." She turned sharply and walked back toward the gravel lane, her visor gleaming in the sun. Ellie stepped onto the porch once she was gone, her arms crossed tight. "That was weird. She acted like we're trespassers." "Power trip," Jack said simply. But the soldier in him noted the stiffness in Karen's shoulders, the way she never once broke eye contact. This wasn't about a bylaw. This was about control. That night, Ellie couldn't settle. She paced the kitchen while Jack washed dishes. Something about her isn't right. "Did you see the way she looked at Dad? Like she hated him." "Bullies always look the same," Jack said. "Doesn't matter if it's a street gang or an HOA president. They want to see you flinch." "And you didn't tell her what you do," Ellie pressed. Jack dried his hands and faced her. "The fewer people who know, the better. I came here to be your husband, not Commander Rayner. She sighed, nodding, but her eyes still searched the window as if expecting Karen's visor to appear in the dark. Later, when the house was still and Walter's snores filled the back bedroom, Jack stepped out onto the porch for air. The moonlight silvered the water. He took a slow breath, trying to shake the coil of tension winding through his gut. That's when he saw it. Nailed to a pine tree at the edge of the clearing, flapping in the wind. Jack walked down the steps, crunch of gravel loud underfoot, and ripped the paper free. Bold black letters scrawled in thick marker, "This lake doesn't belong to outsiders." The hammer marks were still fresh. Jack's hand curled around the note, his jaw clenched. Whoever nailed it wanted a reaction. They'd get one. Behind him, the cabin lights glowed warm, Ellie's silhouette moving past the window, Walter's old dog lifting its head from the porch mat. Jack folded the note slowly, slid it into his pocket, and looked back toward the woods. The silence of the lake no longer felt like peace. It felt like the pause before a fight. The morning broke with the smell of coffee and bacon, but Ellie barely touched her plate. She kept glancing out at the window toward the pine where the note had been nailed. Jack had burned it before sunrise, feeding it into the old wood stove. The last thing Walter needed was fuel for his temper. "You really think it was Karen?" Ellie asked finally, her voice low. Jack sipped his coffee, eyes steady on his plate. She had motive, she had nerve, and she was here yesterday. Walter grunted from the head of the table. His fishing cap was already on, rod leaning against the wall. "That woman's got no right poking around here. You ask me, we should call the sheriff." "I did," Jack said. "Dispatch said he's out on county business until Monday. Small town, thin resources." Walter muttered a curse under his breath. Or maybe he's scared of her. Ellie frowned. "Scared? Of a homeowners association president? You don't know types like her," Walter shot back. "They get power in their head and think they own the whole damn world." Jack let the conversation drop, but the truth gnawed at him. Walter wasn't wrong. Power, even petty power, corrupted quick. By late morning, the sound of crunching tires on gravel returned. Jack set his coffee down and stepped onto the porch before the truck even stopped. Karen climbed out, this time flanked by two men in polos tucked into khakis. They looked like they'd rather be golfing than here, but the clipboards in their hands said otherwise. Karen's smile was sugar-laced venom. "Mr. Rayner, we've had several complaints." Jack crossed his arms. "From who?" "From residents who care about keeping our lake safe and respectable." She gestured at her companions. "This is Stan and Greg, compliance officers with the HOA. Stan adjusted his glasses. "We have reports of fishing without a permit, excessive noise after sundown, and illegal use of an outdoor barbecue grill." He said it as if he were listing felonies. Walter burst through the door behind Jack, face red. "Now hold on just a damn minute." Jack raised a hand, cutting him off before his temper could explode. "You're saying my 74-year-old father-in-law can't fish in a lease? In a lake he's paid taxes on for 4 decades? Karen's eyes narrowed. "The lake is communal property. Use is subject to approval and bylaws." "Bylaws written by who?" Walter barked. Karen's lips tightened. "By those of us who care about preserving this community." Walter jabbed a finger toward her. "You're a bully with a clipboard. That's all you are." The color rose in Karen's cheeks. For a flicker of a second, Jack saw the mask slip, rage boiling under the neat visor and the smug smile. Then it snapped back into place. "You'll receive fines in the mail," she said briskly, "and a warning. Any further violations will result in legal escalation." Jack stepped forward, lowering his voice just enough that the two men behind her had to lean in to catch it. "This is your second visit in 24 hours. Next time you want to knock on my door, Karen, bring an actual court order." Something sharp flickered in her eyes. She opened her mouth, but Jack didn't give her the chance. He turned, ushered Walter back inside, and shut the door hard enough to rattle the frame. Ellie stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, face pale. "Jack, this isn't going to stop. She's not just going to walk away." "She'll overplay her hand," Jack said. His jaw tightened. "People like her always do." That night, Jack found himself staring out the cabin's bedroom window. The lake reflected the moonlight in long, broken lines. His mind drifted, not to Karen, but to another night, another window. Flashback. The memory came uninvited. The last raid he'd led before retirement. The cramped apartment reeking of gun oil and meth, his SWAT team stacked against the wall, rifles up. Jack's hand raised, silent signal. Breach, flashbang, screams. He remembered the suspect's face. Wild-eyed, desperate, pulling a pistol from under the couch. Jack had pulled the trigger before the man even cleared the barrel. One shot, one life ended. The city had called him a hero. His men had clapped him on the back. But later, in the locker room, he'd stared at his hands and wondered if he'd ever wash the blood away. He blinked hard, the memory fading. Outside, the woods seemed too still. Ellie touched his arm from behind. "You're awake too. Couldn't sleep." Her voice was quiet. "Maybe we should go back to the city. Just pack up, before she escalates." Jack shook his head. "No. If we leave, she wins, and this is our cabin. Our lake." He turned, forcing a small smile. "We're safe as long as I'm here." But even as he said it, he wasn't sure he believed it. It was near midnight when he heard it. A faint hum, unnatural in the mountain quiet. Jack frowned, pushing off the bed and moving to the window. There. Hovering just outside, its red lights blinking like eyes in the dark. A drone. It bobbed against the glass for a moment, lens tilting toward the bedroom, watching, recording. Ellie gasped behind him. "Oh my God!" Jack's fists clenched. Not just harassment, not just intimidation. This was surveillance, a direct violation of his family's privacy. He strode to the dresser, yanked open the drawer, and pulled out a heavy flashlight. When he swung it up and hit the beam, the drone jerked, wobbled, and zipped away into the trees. Jack lowered the light slowly, breath tight in his chest. Whoever was flying it was close, too close. He turned to Ellie, his voice flat, controlled. "It's Karen, or Brett, and they just crossed a line." Jack barely slept. Every creak of the old cabin made his pulse quicken. Every rustle of leaves outside sounded like footsteps. By dawn he was already dressed, boots laced, scanning the tree line with binoculars. Ellie emerged from the bedroom, her hair tied back, her face pale. "Any sign of them?" Jack lowered the lenses. No movement, but whoever was flying that drone knows the terrain. They weren't some kid fooling around. Walter clomped down the stairs, already muttering, "Damn neighbors, snooping, spying. I should march right over and you'll do nothing," Jack cut in, his voice sharp. "That's exactly what they want, for us to lose control." Walter bristled, but the steel in Jack's eyes quieted him. By mid-morning, the proof arrived. A thick envelope slid under the cabin's front door. Jack spotted it first, crouched low as if it might be rigged. He peeled it open. Inside were photographs, grainy but clear enough. Ellie on the deck reading a book, Walter hauling his fishing gear, Jack himself chopping wood by the shed. Every picture was taken from outside the property line, zoomed in. A stalker's collection. Tucked at the bottom was a typed note. "This community has rules. Comply or pay the price." Ellie's hand flew to her mouth. Walter swore loud enough to rattle the walls. Jack's jaw clenched. He had seen threats before, but this wasn't a bluff. This was escalation. He spent the afternoon in quiet preparation. Old habits resurfaced. The commander in him awakening after years of trying to bury that part of himself. He checked the locks, reinforced the back door, unrolled a dusty kit from his duffel bag, tourniquets, bandages, saline, all military grade. He set it neatly on the kitchen counter, just in case. Ellie watched him, worry etched in her face. "Jack, are we in danger?" He paused, meeting her eyes. "We already are." Late afternoon B wrought the first real test. A shadow appeared at the edge of the woods. Jack spotted it from the porch, tall, broad-shouldered, moving deliberately. Brett, Karen's son. He stepped into the clearing, a rifle slung casually over his shoulder, not pointed, not raised, but displayed. A message. "Morning, neighbor," Brett called, voice laced with mockery. "Lovely day, isn't it?" Jack didn't move from the porch. "Put the gun away, Brett." Brett smirked. "Open carry state. Perfectly legal. You know the law, don't you?" Walter stormed out behind Jack, fists clenched. "You no good." Jack's hand shot out, stopping him. His eyes never left Brett. "You're trespassing. Leave." Brett tilted his head. "Funny thing about property lines, depends on whose map you use. HOA's map says this, here's communal ground." He tapped his boot on the grass, just feet from the porch. Jack's voice was calm, controlled. "Step back. Now." For a long beat, Brett didn't move. Then, with a mocking salute, he turned and disappeared into the trees. The silence afterward was heavier than gunfire. Ellie whispered, "Jack, he's testing you." Jack nodded slowly. "And next time, he won't stop at words." That night, Jack set up a watch. He sat by the window with his binoculars, flashlight, and the weight of old instincts pressing down on him. Ellie tried to sleep. Walter paced until exhaustion dragged him to bed. Hours passed. The woods stayed still. Then, just past midnight, movement, a flicker of light. Jack snapped the binoculars up. A flame, small but deliberate. Someone at the far edge of the dock had lit a torch. He grabbed the flashlight, shined it hard, and the figure froze. A woman's silhouette, Karen, holding the flame like a priestess at some ritual. Even from the distance, Jack could feel her eyes on him, a silent promise. This isn't over. She dropped the torch into the lake. Steam hissed as water swallowed the flame. Then she turned and vanished into the trees. Jack sat there long after she was gone, his grip white-knuckled around the binoculars. Ellie's voice was trembling when she spoke from the doorway. She's insane." Jack lowered the lenses. His voice was flat, cold. "No, she's organized, and she's escalating." Walter appeared behind Ellie, his face drawn. "So, what do we do?" Jack exhaled slowly. He stared at the lake, the torch's fading ripples spreading across the water like veins of fire. "We prepare," he said, "because the next move they make won't be a warning.